Record on this screen. Woo! Alrighty, we got this going now.
Woohoo!
Okay, let me pull up the little text I'm gonna say about you, but otherwise, welcome everybody to our, what is this now? Fifth? Yeah, our fifth artist talk for the Öræfi knitting group. Today we are very excited to have Klara Nilsson, who I've had the pleasure of being a pattern tester for one of her patterns, and have just been following your work since you started your studies at the Swedish School of Textiles. So it's been really, really awesome to watch your journey over the past couple of years. But for those who don't know Klara, Klara is a knitwear designer from southern Sweden and a somewhat recent graduate of the Swedish School of Textiles. And she loves playing with colors, patterns, and what you can see her on the screen is a very playful and just youthful and energetic knitwear designs. She's well known for her work in these multicolored techniques, multicolored cable techniques, and will be giving us a little bit of an insight into her journey into knitting and just her experience at the Swedish School of Textiles and since then as well. So welcome, Klara.
Thank you. Yeah, so as you said, my name is Klara, more known as Klara Berry, textile designer from Sweden. And as you said, I love to work with the multicolored cables. I love colors and patterns, and I have my own company called Klara Berry. And when I'm not doing that, I also work in my local yarn shop called Henrietta's Garn. So yeah, today I will talk a little bit about my textile journey and then go more into my multicolored cables. So if you can switch to the next slide.
I clicked on it. It might take a moment to load. Yep, there we go.
Yeah, so I've been doing textiles for as long as I can remember. When I was very little, I started doing embroidery. When I was 10, I got my first sewing machine and started making neckties and bags that I sold to people in my family. After that, I got really into crocheting. So if you switch to the next slide.
There'll be a slight delay probably each time.
Yeah, so it started with the small amigurumi figures, and then I went on to crocheting portraits. So yeah, they were very big, and today I don't know how I had the patience to do them, but yeah, I really enjoyed doing it then. After that, you can switch. I got into crocheting clothes, and this was kind of during high school. And I studied natural science at high school, but and thought that that was what I was going to work with until I went to a college fair and found the Swedish School of Textiles and realized that you can actually work with something that you like. So I decided that I was going to focus on textiles. So before you study at the Swedish School of Textiles, it's good to have gone to just get some basic knowledge of textiles before. So if you go to the next one. So before I went to the Swedish School of Textiles, I studied at what we in Sweden call a folkhögskola or a folk high school. So it's basically a school where you go after high school if you need to just study up your grade so you can qualify for higher education, or if you want to go into more special courses like art or music or something like that. So I studied 1 year of textiles. So we got to learn the basics of sewing, printing, pattern making, knitting, weaving, a little bit of everything. After that year, I just really enjoyed going to that school, so I decided to stay 1 more year and study art. So if you go to the next one, here are just some small textile related art pieces I made during that year, but we also made lots of other things as well, of course. But my plan from the beginning was that after this I would go on to study fashion design at the Swedish School of Textiles. But during those 2 years, I realized that the thing that I enjoy about clothes is how patterns, colors, and how the textile of the garment is made, and how that kind of makes the clothes special. So instead, I decided that I was going to study textile design. So if you go to the next one. So I started studying at the textile design at Swedish School of Textiles in 2018. And it's a bachelor degree where you get to try out lots of different things. So for example, here's a project I made where I explored knitting from a 2D perspective. I don't remember what the assignment was, but it was fun. Yeah, but you get to try lots of different things, but the main areas that you or courses you do during those 3 years is, if you go to the next one, printing, weaving, and knitting. So those are the main focus of the education. So it starts with a course where you just get the basics of learn the techniques and the machines, and then you do a design project where you make a textile collection based on that knowledge. So here's my print collection where I was inspired by my favorite band, The Killers. They come from Las Vegas, so lots of neon and stuff like that. So for the next one, was the weaving. So here I worked with stripes. This was just when COVID hit, so most of this collection was just sketches because we had to go home from school and we couldn't bring the looms with us. Yeah. And then for the next one was the knitting. So here I was inspired by candy. And yeah, so we worked both on the 3 pieces to the left were made on a hand knitting machine, and then the 2 pieces to the right were made on the industrial machine. So we worked with both industrial and by hand on all 3 of these areas. So then during the 3rd year, you decide which of these areas you want to specialize in. And I, of course, chose knitting. So if you go to the next slide, this is where we get into the multicolored cables, because that's what I wanted to explore during my degree work. Yeah, so the thing that I wanted to explore was how to combine cable knitting with color work techniques like ferrule and intarsia. So for cable knitting is usually made in one color, and color work techniques are usually made flat. So I want to see how I could create new expressions by combining the techniques. So if you go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is my final collection, Disrupting Patterns. I made the whole collection by hand on a hand knitting machine because I wanted to break away from the unsustainable ways you're usually working in the textile industry and kind of bring a different value to the textile by letting everything take time and focus on the craft. Yeah. So for the next one, here's a little photo of my mood board. And then the next one, I also made a pattern and color mood board. So I focused a lot on dots and stripes just to make it easier for myself. So I didn't have that many patterns to work with. So for the next slide. So I started making lots of samples and swatches just to try out how I could combine the techniques. And I pretty quickly realized that I could divide them into 3 different tracks. So if you go to the next one, we have the traditional cables, moving stitches, and the giant cables. So on the next one, we have the traditional cables. So for this track, I worked the traditional way of making cables where you knit the stitches in the wrong order to get that twist of the strands so you get the cable. So for this exploration, I took inspiration from the stitches used in those classic Aran sweaters. So for example, the honeycomb, the diamond, and the cable. And these can of course be changed in many different ways. So if you go to the next one, you can use textured yarns for the next one. That looks a bit different, so I don't know if that one will work. No, that looks weird. But here's just stripes in different ways. Then you can work with how you twist, which way you twist the cable. So if you let it kind of twine around itself, or if you let it go back and forth so you kind of get a layer effect. And if you work with layers, you can also work with, for the next one, if you do a stripe, for example, you can have it on the front layer or the back layer, or stripes in different directions. And the next one, I work a lot with two-stranded cables where you have 2 strands that are twisted together. You can of course use other more strands if you want, like I've done here. And for the next one, here I explored 2D and 3D patterns together. And then for the last one, here I worked with other patterns. So here's versions with squares instead. So then it became my final piece. If you go to the next one. So yeah. So for my first track, the traditional cables, I made this piece with big dots, and I focused on that striped cable pattern. This one was knitted in strand knitting or ferrule technique, where you get floats on the back, as you can see on the photo to the bottom left. So this was the first piece of the collection. If you go to the next slide, we have the moving stitches. So here on the machine, I move the stitches. It's basically just increases and decreases. And by moving the stitches, you can get an illusion of a cable without having to actually cross any stitches, which makes it easier to work on a larger scale. And as you can see on the photo that is a bit zoomed in here, the machine made a mistake and didn't knit on one row on this sample. And because of how the stitches are moving, instead of just a straight line, it became wavy. So I decided to enhance that for my final piece. If you go to the next one. which is this one. As you can see, the yellow lines are just straight rows without any pattern, but because of how the stitches are moving, you get this wavy effect. And this one is also made in ferrule technique with the strands on the floats on the backside. And then for the last piece, the giant cables, here I worked with knitting and filling long tubes that I then braided together to kind of explore what cable knitting can be and how I can work more with volume. So for this piece, I wanted, for the other pieces, the pattern has kind of followed the cable. But for this one, I wanted the pattern to work independently from the cable. So if you go to the next one.
That's the last one for some
That's
reason.
the last one. No.
I don't know if it didn't download. Here, wait, let me stop for a moment. Let's see what happens if I uncompress it. How many more are there supposed to be?
Let me check. Not that many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, maybe 9, 10, 11, 12, 16.
Okay, let's figure out. Yeah, I guess I was doing like a quick look, not so much like the full view of it. Yeah, I don't have PowerPoint on my computer, so I can't open it as a PowerPoint.
Oh.
Is there a way you could save it as a PDF, possibly?
Yes, I should be able to do that.
And
PDF.
is there a way to compress it in PDF form so it's a little bit smaller?
We'll see.
I already have so many questions. This is so cool. Getting to hear you talk about your work in detail like this.
Okay, it's smaller than the other one, at least.
Okay, great. Are you uploading it to the same folder as before?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let me know when it's loaded and I'll download it again, or maybe I can open it from the drive and share like that.
Yeah. Less than a minute. It says. Come on. Okay, now it should be up.
All right, upload or refreshing. All right, downloading real quick. As quick as it can go. Was it Breen? Did I say it right? I told
It's Bryn.
Bryn, sorry. Did you
Bryn.
have any questions in the meantime while we get the rest of her presentation up?
Oh, okay. So I have just a couple like general questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious about, like, I know it seems that you find a lot of inspiration from like color and texture, but
Mhm.
like in the world around you, where do you find that where are you finding a lot of your inspiration?
So that's a part that is further down in the presentation. But yeah,
Spoiler.
spoilers. Yeah, so when I work, I part of it is just looking back at things I've done before and seeing how I can like work with it further and do it in a different way. I find a lot of inspiration from Instagram and Pinterest, and just also seeing how I can make it my own way. And then I also take a lot of inspiration from bands and artists that I like. That's mostly where I find my inspiration.
That makes sense.
Sorry. And we're back.
Yay!
Okay, so finishing up here.
Yes, and the next one.
This one?
Yeah, so here you can see that the pattern is more, the dots are placed on top of the cable and doesn't really follow the braid or the cable in any way. So this one is knitted in intarsia instead. So yeah, I'm not gonna go into how to knit intarsia. If you have any questions about that, I can answer that later. But yeah, so this was the final piece. If you go to the next one, here we have the whole collection together again. So yeah, after I graduated, I finished in 2021. And after that, I basically just continued my exploration of combining cables and patterns. I'm really stuck with it now and I love it. So if you go to the next one, yeah, so I've just continued exploring the techniques both by knitting by hand and on a hand knitting machine. I have one myself as well now. So at the end of 2021, I started my own company, Klara. And the idea for Klara, if you go to the next slide, at least one part of it is that I want to make limited edition knitwear pieces that I will sell, finished pieces. But today I mostly work with making knitting patterns. So if you go to the next slide. Yeah, so one part of it is that I release patterns myself. Here's some of them. You can find them on my Ravelry if you search for Klara, and you can also find them through the link in my bio on Instagram as well. So if you go to the next one. So for example, we have the Klara and the Klara mittens that Alice test knitted for me. Here we have them. So lovely. So as I said, I look back a lot on what I've done before. So the idea for these patterns actually come from a sample I made during the pre-study. So if you go to the next slide, you can see the sample to the left that I made. And then the idea was to make a sweater. I started this 2 years ago and it's still not done yet. I need to sew on one more sleeve and then it's done. But yeah, so the idea is that sweater will be out at the end of this year. I just need to finish it and finish the pattern as well. So if you go to the next slide. Also, as I said, I look a lot on Instagram and Pinterest and take inspiration from there and see how I can make things my own way. So last summer, it was this big thing with the chunky crochet bag with the spaghetti yarn. So I wanted to see how I could make a Klara berry version of that. So that became the honey bag, which is the one to the left. And then recently I've also made a laptop case with a slightly different pattern. And I've also made a bag version of that. So that will be my 2 next patterns that will come out. And if you go to the next one. Yeah, here's just some crochet patterns, because I also crochet sometimes. So I do that as well. If you go to the next one. Yeah, so part of it is that I release patterns myself, and then I also have done a few patterns for magazines as well. So this one is a sweater I made for Pom Pom magazine last year. If you go to the next slide.
I just want to say I was so excited when I saw this sweater that you designed, and that because I personally have been following Pom Pom and get their magazines as well. So when I was like,
Yeah.
because it's a really competitive magazine to get into. So it's super awesome.
It was a lot of fun, because this was actually my first pattern that I wrote ever.
Wow.
So I was a bit scared to do it, but it went fine, and yeah, I really love it.
Awesome.
So if you go to the next one. So yeah, in their submission call, they had a mood board, and in that mood board they had this the photo of this sample that was from my pre-study. So I decided to just base my design on that sample and kind of just clean it up a bit, and yeah, use colors that would fit into the idea they had for the magazine. And I've also, this one I have plans to also release later this year as a pattern that I release myself. And I also plan to make a chunkier version of it, because this one I think I knitted it on 2.5 millimeter needles, and when you knit cables all over, it shrinks it together a lot. So I think on the front panel it was like 300 stitches and 300 stitches on the back, and I had 1 month to knit the whole thing, but I did it. I didn't do anything else but knit, but I did it. So I will make a chunkier version that will, I think, will go a bit faster, because I think a lot of people will be a bit frightened to knit something like this on 2.5 millimeter needles. So yeah, that will be out later this year. No, it's fine. So another sweater I made is this one for Novita magazine, which is a Finnish knitting magazine, and they also make yarn. So here I wanted to explore that layer effect you get with the honeycomb pattern, and see how by just changing which color is at the front and which color is at the back, you can just play around with stripes in a different way. And this one will also be out later this year, so I will have lots of sweaters coming out during autumn, winter is the plan. So if you go to the next one, for this one I also made this beanie. So it's a reversible beanie. So one side is cabled and one side is striped, so you can decide which part you want to fold up at the brim. And this one is out already. So if you go to the next one. Yeah, so back to where I get my inspiration from. As I said, I look back on things I've done before and things I see. And then I also take a lot of inspiration from bands and artists that I like. I've always been a fangirl. And when I first started getting into making clothes, I had this idea that I wanted to get into making fun merchandise. So that's something that I've started to think about more recently. And it gives me a new way to kind of think of how I can use my cables, and also just makes me challenge myself and try new techniques. So this is something I've really enjoyed recently and that I want to do more of. Yeah, so if you go to the next one. Yeah, that's a little bit about what I do and have done. So I post a lot on Instagram. So if you want to follow along on my textile journey, you can find me there. I've been a bit quiet lately because I've been working on so many projects for magazines and stuff like that that I can't share. So I haven't had anything to post, but I'm really excited about getting back to making things that I can share, because I really enjoy that as well, and just seeing how I can display my pieces in that setting as well. So yeah.
Amazing. All right, I'll just stop sharing. Little QRs. Oh wait, I just clicked escape. I didn't stop share. Here we go. Amazing. But I'll open up the floor to questions if you have any more. I could talk for, we can go over as well since we had a bit of a late start, unless anyone needs to get moving. But yeah, please, the floor is yours for questions.
I'm just curious. This is just kind of a fun question. What's your favorite project that you've made and why?
Ooh, my favorite project that I made. Now I have to just remember what I made. Yeah, recently I've really loved the honey bag. I think it's such a fun, fun expression of it. But I guess like the most important project for myself is my degree work, because that's where everything started and just a place I still take a lot of inspiration from. So that, I guess.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that you'd be interested in making like fan merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your dream artist to do that for?
The Killers.
I should have guessed that probably.
Yeah. Of course, the Killers, and then I have lots of different artists that I would love to work with. I think that would be really fun. But yeah.
Yeah, I should have guessed that one from the start. So this is a little more like, I don't know, maybe more applicable to me, but I've been interested in going to the Swedish School of Textiles. It's something I've looked at. But do you mind just talking a little bit more about like your class experience there? Or I guess
like the classes you took and like
what we did, kind of.
If that's all right.
Or the curriculum, kind of like where you saw room to growth. Because I'm also curious in this as well. Like I'm more interested in the master's program there, but like
me too.
Kind of like the school culture and kind of just I guess the education system, because we're both Americans and the European education system is a lot more independent than how the US education system is. So that would just be really interesting hearing, at least from the BA perspective, what just the overall school's education system's like.
Yeah, so we, of course, most of it is just working by yourself. You get your own space where you can work, but everyone is it's basically just two big rooms where everyone gets their own space to work, and we had lots of different things. We did of course, it's all the practical stuff where you, yeah, for the knitting where you knit and just trying out different materials in different ways. But then, of course, also more theoretical where you like study design methodology. Yeah. And just like really think about your design methods and how you work. But I think it was very good because I work a lot with colors and patterns that kind of is a bit different from Scandinavian design. But I never felt like that was something I shouldn't do. They always, the teachers and supervisors always worked from your perspective and how you wanted everything to be. So that was really good, I think. But still, they still like pushed you to explore everything further, and maybe you should try doing something with less, more muted colors, or just to try it out or see how it would work. But yeah, I think that was really good.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Just interested in that. So
Yeah, kind of going off of that, I'm curious, being surrounded by so many other creatives, if it's hard or if it's easy, like it could be either way, to still find your own kind of voice and style through your textile work when you're working so closely with other like-minded creatives.
I think it was because everyone in my class had very different styles. So that was kind of a fun way to work because when we had presentations and stuff like that, even if you didn't know who made it, you could always see who made it. So everyone really had their own special style, and I think like that's one of the things that I really miss about not going to school anymore, just to be able to talk with other people about your work. If you get stuck, you always have someone around you that you can ask, even if it's not really that you need an answer, you just need someone to listen to what you're doing and have someone that knows what you're doing. So I think that was just good. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then kind of going off of that now in your own creative practice, how has it been, like, if you separated it all, like your work-life balance and still fostering that community to like share your ideas and kind of get feedback?
Yeah, so recently I've kind of been doing a bit too much other work, I think. So I've just been, yeah, I haven't felt that inspired or just had any energy to really do anything. And I think that's also something that is more difficult when you're doing everything alone, that you don't have anyone to like discuss things like that as well with, or have someone to kind of push you to do it anyway. But I feel like I'm starting to get back into it, and I think Instagram is really good as well to get feedback on things you do and also get help. Like yesterday I'm working on that chunky version of the jacquard sweater, but I can't decide on the colors, so that's also like a way to get some help with those making those decisions, even if I'm gonna make the decision myself, but I can still like. I think it's easier to make a decision if someone else tells you what you should do, because then you feel if that's actually what you want to do or if it was something else. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And then I was wondering, for these magazines that you're making patterns for, are they reaching out to you, or are you finding these opportunities yourself? How's that kind of been going for you?
It's mostly been that they have submission calls that I've sent in my design submission to,
Nice.
and then they've chosen them.
Yeah. And has it have like, what's kind of your most memorable experience with that, and your least memorable, or just like most frustrating experience with that?
So the most frustrating was definitely the card pullover, because of the deadline and because I decided to do it with such a thin yarn. So that was like for that month that I had, the only thing I did was just knit. I woke up and started knitting, and then I just knitted the whole day until I went to bed for a whole month. The only time I left my apartment was to go to work, because I also worked as a barista. Then I don't anymore, but so that was the only time I left my apartment and did something else. So my hands really hurt after that month, but it was worth it.
Amazing. And I mean, it turned out so well, so
Thank
I
you.
hope you got through some good shows while knitting that, like, or movies, caught up on a lot of things. Yeah. And then what's kind of your vision for Clary Berry, your company, and like where do you hope to take it?
Yeah, so I really want to get started with creating my own knitwear brand, kind of, with focus on slow fashion, really playful, colorful knitted pieces that I will make and sell. But it's a lot of work, and it's everything takes a lot of time, and when you do a lot of different things and then also have to work with like a regular job, it's difficult to find the time for everything. But I hope that during this summer I won't work as much, so then my focus will be on creating a web shop, because that's the main thing that I have to do to get everything started, basically.
Yeah, it's annoying how much the digital, like, yeah, shops are kind of what either holds people back or gets people, like, that first little step is so intimidating, but I feel like
it's
once you
just
take
that
it,
first step, but then
yeah.
I feel like if I just get over that, then everything will just be so much easier. But it's just taking that step is,
Yeah, definitely just a step into the unknown in a way.
yeah.
Yeah. And then do you have you worked with collaborators, or do you look to work with collaborators on projects?
I have not with anything like very with my cables or anything. Last year I made a fashion collection with a designer also based in my town called Mille Sylvan. I was best friend with her sister when we were growing up, and she was best friend with my little sister when they were growing up. So we've known each other for a while, and she's started getting into sewing. So we made a collection together where I knitted and she sewed, and that was really fun because we have very different styles. So it was fun to like work with someone else and see how we could combine what we do in one way. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like a few collaborations I've done have been always really interesting on like seeing your work through someone else's eyes and kind of what they're like drawn to for how to work it with what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could probably keep going with the questions, but I also don't want to keep holding people any longer than they might want to be here. Did you have any more questions or thoughts or comments?
I don't really have any more, but I'm just so happy to like be hearing more and listening. So
thank you for being here.
Yeah, we had some technical difficulties. This talk was supposed to happen last week, and then we were lucky enough to be able to just reschedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I'm excited about because it means I got to come. So
yeah.
Hey.
I guess maybe one kind of wrapping up question. What would you like tell your younger self before, like about like any advice or kind of just like things to not be hard on yourself going through your if you were to start over this whole textile journey again?
Maybe to just keep going and believe in yourself. Yeah, that's the main thing.
I think like that's when the going gets tough, that's when you're going to grow the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Klara. And
thank you.
Sorry, I'm going to pronounce your name wrong again. Brian?
Oh, sorry. Bryn.
Bryn, I'm so sorry. I just
No.
My dyslexic brain gets very confused with your name.
It's so fine. I'm like, you just have to skip like half the letters and then you got it. It confuses everyone. It's fine.
Yeah, but thank you so much for joining us. And I will be putting on the Instagram and Facebook. And then I've been really bad at emailing people when the recording's ready, but hopefully this time I'll actually get my stuff together to be able to email people. But Klara, you're wrapping up our like winter spring artist talk series, and so in the coming weeks or coming week or two, I'll be announcing what our summer fall artist talks will be, and then we'll be switching, kind of deviating a little bit from knitting more into just fiber crafts in general. So thank you so much for wrapping up our first sort of like season, you could say. And yeah, really appreciate the time you took in putting together your beautiful presentation, and just very inspirational, especially like just the amount of swatches you made throughout your I was like, wow, like just knowing how long it can take to do cables, like, and the math, and just like, yeah, your brain works.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, your brain works in magical ways like that. Amazing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and thank you again for your flexibility. That was really great. Awesome. Well, I guess without any further ado, have a great rest of your days, and we'll see you on the internet somewhere.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.